The galaxy didn't notice when humanity went silent. Then everything started collapsing. By the time they realized what happened, it was already too late. Welcome to humanity's greatest moment and the galaxy's worst nightmare. When 4 trillion humans vanished overnight, the Galactic Council thought they'd finally be rid of those loud, emotional creatures who never knew their place. What they discovered instead would haunt them forever. Humanity wasn't just part of galactic civilization. They were the foundation. And when foundations crumble, everything falls. This is the story of humanity's silent exit, and the galaxy that quaked in their absence. The first thing Ambassador Thelnock noticed wasn't the silence itself. It was the absence of the noise he'd spent 3 centuries learning to ignore. Earth's diplomatic channel, that endless stream of human chatter, debate, argument, jokes, proposals, counterproposals, cultural exchanges, music samples, mathematical proofs, philosophical treatises, cooking shows, and inexplicable memes that had flooded Galactic Council networks since first contact in 2247, had simply stopped. Not with a dramatic farewell. Not with a declaration. Just stopped. Like a heartbeat flatlines. The council chambers on Proxima Station hummed with the usual political theater. 73 species arguing over trade routes, mineral rights, cultural preservation mandates. Standard procedure. Thelnock's mandibles clicked absently as he reviewed agricultural quota projections, his 4 eyes tracking holographic data streams with practiced efficiency. The humans had been scheduled to present their counterargument to the Vraxian motion, something about limiting pre-warp civilization contact protocols. Earth's delegation was always passionate about that particular issue, almost annoyingly so. But their seats were empty. Not unusual. Humans were often late, arriving with apologies and coffee. Always coffee, that bitter stimulant they consumed with religious devotion. They'd rush in, out of breath, data pads clutched in too many fingers, and launch into presentations with that peculiar intensity that made other species uncomfortable. Too emotional. Too invested. Too human. An hour passed. Then another. Thelnock sent a query through the diplomatic network. Standard protocol. Perhaps Earth's delegation had been delayed by one of their mechanical transportation failures. They insisted on using actual physical ships for ceremonial purposes, despite quantum gate technology being freely available. Sentimental creatures. The query bounced back. Destination unreachable. He tried again. Same result. A cold sensation crept up his spine analog, something his species only felt in the presence of predators. But that was absurd. The council chambers were the safest location in known space, protected by shields that could withstand stellar radiation, guarded by automated defense systems designed by 18 different civilizations. Nothing dangerous could reach them here. He stood, his ceremonial robes rustling with the movement, and approached the communications nexus at the chamber's center. Other delegates barely noticed. A Qualvian was droning on about atmospheric composition standards. Boring, technical, safe. Thelnock's fingers trembled slightly as he input Earth's direct channel codes, the private ones, reserved for emergency communication. He'd only used them twice before. Once during the Kepler asteroid crisis when a mining colony's life support had failed, and once when a human child had somehow hacked into his personal terminal and filled it with images of small furry Earth animals. The code accepted. The channel opened. Static. Pure, empty static. Not interference. Not jamming. Not technical failure. The kind of static that exists when there's nothing on the other end. When the transmitter is broadcasting to an empty room. When no one is home. Impossible, he whispered in Galactic Standard, though the word fell hollow even as it left his vocal chamber. He tried Earth's primary broadcast beacon, the one positioned at their star system's edge, constantly transmitting their location and diplomatic status to the galaxy. Every civilization had one. It was how you announced your presence, your continued existence, your willingness to engage with the galactic community. Earth's beacon was silent. He tried Luna Station. Silence. Mars Colonial Government. Silence. Europa Deep Ice Facility. Silence. Titan Atmospheric Research Platform. Silence. The Kuiper Belt Defense Grid. Silence. The Orc Cloud Monitoring Array. Silence. 27 human installations across their entire star system, each one a hub of constant communication, data exchange, scientific broadcasting, civilian chatter, all silent. Like someone had thrown a switch and turned off an entire species. Thelnock's primary heart began beating faster, pumping cold ichor through his veins. He expanded his search, accessing public networks, civilian channels, the human portion of the galactic internet they called the FedNet. Human content creators had filled it with everything from educational material to entertainment, so bizarre it had spawned its own academic field, applied human recreational psychology. Every channel dead, every website unreachable, every streaming platform offline, every social network empty. Over 400 billion human accounts across the galactic network, just gone. Not deleted, not suspended, gone, like they'd never existed. Senior Ambassador. A junior aide, a creche with bright blue scales, approached with typical efficiency. The Earth delegation has missed their scheduled presentation. Should we reschedule? Felnock's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of severe agitation. Try to contact Earth. Any channel, any method. Report back immediately. The aide's eye stalks quivered with confusion, but she obeyed, scuttling toward the communications array. Felnock watched as she tried, failed, tried again, her scales shifting toward the yellow spectrum, fear coloration. Sir, I can't reach them. Any of them. It's like they've disappeared, Felnock finished. The word tasted like metal in his mouth. The creche aide's voice dropped to barely audible. Should we notify the council? Should they? Felnock's mind raced. Humans were dramatic, yes, but they weren't prone to pranks on this scale. They were also fiercely independent, occasionally rebellious, often frustrating, but they always communicated. Always. Even during the trade dispute of 2289, when Earth had refused to speak to the Vraxian delegation for 6 months, they'd still maintained their beacon, still broadcasted their presence, still sent representatives to sit in silent protest at council sessions. This was different. This was total withdrawal. Begin emergency protocols, Felnock ordered, his voice steadier than he felt. Alert the Security Council. I want a full status check on all human territories, installations, and vessels. And someone send a probe to the Sol system. Now. The chamber erupted in controlled chaos as the full implications began to spread through the diplomatic networks. Humans, those loud, passionate, omnipresent humans who had insinuated themselves into virtually every aspect of galactic society in less than a century, had vanished overnight. The probe reached Sol system 3 standard days later. Its sensor readings transmitted back in real time, displayed across every screen in the council chambers. Every delegate present, all 73 species, watched in absolute silence. Earth was still there, still spinning in its stable orbit, still blue and green and wrapped in white clouds, still beautiful in that way photographs could never quite capture. Humans had been right about that. But it was silent. The cities blazed with light, automated systems still running, power grids still functioning, vehicles still moving along pre-programmed routes. But there were no humans in them. No life signs detected. Not in the sprawling megalopolises. Not in the remote villages. Not in the underground facilities, or the floating ocean cities, or the high-altitude research platforms. Mars? Empty. Luna? Empty. Every asteroid mine, every deep space refinery, every research vessel, every colonial outpost from Mercury to the heliopause, empty. For trillion humans had simply left. No bodies. No signs of struggle. No evidence of mass evacuation. Their possessions remained. Their buildings stood intact. Their automated systems continued operating. But the humans themselves had vanished as if they'd been plucked from reality by some cosmic hand. The council convened an emergency session. Theories flew. Mass teleportation, impossible with current technology. Some kind of plague that disintegrated organic matter, but their belongings were untouched. Ascension to a higher dimensional plane. Humans weren't that spiritually advanced, were they? Abduction by an unknown force. What force could take 4 trillion beings without leaving a trace? Ambassador Vrex of the Vraxian Empire spoke first, his reptilian features twisted in what might have been satisfaction. Perhaps they finally realized they didn't belong here. The humans were always problematic. Too aggressive. Too emotional. Too unpredictable. The galaxy is safer without them. A few delegates murmured agreement. Humans had been controversial since first contact, their rapid technological advancement, their refusal to accept the way things have always been done, their tendency to ask uncomfortable questions about council policies that had stood for millennia. But most delegates sat in uneasy silence. Because the galaxy didn't feel safer. It felt hollow. The first economic indicators came within a week. 17 major trade routes had been optimized by human mathematicians. Their calculations had reduced transit times by 37% across multiple sectors. With Earth's networks offline, the optimization algorithms stopped updating. Ships began experiencing delays. Supply chains stuttered. Medical facilities across the galaxy began reporting shortages. Human doctors and researchers had contributed to over 60% of the breakthrough treatments developed in the past half-century. Their research networks, their collaborative databases, their real-time consultation services, all offline. Patients waiting for cutting-edge treatments suddenly had nothing. The Qualvian artistic renaissance that had defined the past 3 decades? Human cultural exchange programs had sparked it. Now Qualvian artists sat before blank canvases, the inspiration, well, suddenly dry. The Clack's diplomatic breakthrough with the isolated Netherian collective? A human negotiator had spent 15 years building trust, learning their symbolic language, bridging the gap between species so different they'd been considered incompatible. The Clack's ambassador stared at the half-finished treaty documents and wept with his species' equivalent of tears. Week 2 brought infrastructure failures. Human engineers had designed the retrofits for 42% of the galaxy's quantum communication relays, improvements that had increased bandwidth while reducing power consumption. As those systems began aging without maintenance, communication lag times increased. Some sectors lost contact entirely. The Praxian Mining Consortium discovered that human geologists had been the only ones who understood how to extract rare elements from neutron star remnants without triggering quantum decay. Their mining operations ground to a halt. Trillions of credits in revenue vanished. Research facilities across the galaxy realized that humans had been the connective tissue of collaborative science. They'd translated not just language, but methodology, helping species with completely different cognitive architectures understand each other's work. Without them, teams fragmented. Projects stalled. The pace of innovation dropped by orders of magnitude. But it was the small things that haunted Thelnock. The human coffee shop on Proxima Station stood empty, its automated systems still grinding beans and brewing drinks for customers who would never come. He'd visited it once, curious about the human obsession with bitter hot beverages. The proprietor, a woman named Janet, had laughed at his expression upon tasting it, then spent 20 minutes finding a blend he actually enjoyed. She'd remembered his preferences every visit afterward, always asked about his family, always had some new story about Earth to share. Now the shop served coffee to empty tables, and Thelnock realized he'd never learned if Janet had children, what her home had looked like, what dreams she'd harbored beyond this distant station. The human teachers in the Xenopedagogy program gone. Their students, young beings from a dozen species, wandered the halls, asking when their favorite instructors would return. No one knew how to tell them the truth. Human educators had pioneered methods for teaching across species barriers, their patience and creativity legendary. Replacement teachers tried, but the children could sense the difference. The human musicians who'd performed weekly concerts, blending instruments from 20 different worlds into harmonies that shouldn't have worked, but somehow did, silenced. The recordings remained, but they felt like echoes of something alive that had died. The human researchers who'd volunteered for dangerous experiments, always the first to test new treatments because someone has to, might as well be us, absent. Medical progress slowed to a crawl as other species proved far more risk-averse. The human comedians who'd somehow made 73 species with completely different concepts of humor actually laughed together, gone. Entertainment venues across the galaxy reported plummeting attendance. Apparently, funny wasn't universal without humans to bridge the gaps. Month 2 brought the first cascading failures. The Callisian refugee crisis. Humans had been managing the resettlement programs, coordinating housing, resources, cultural integration. Without them, the system collapsed. Thousands of refugees found themselves stranded, and tensions erupted into violence. The Council scrambled to respond, but they couldn't replicate the human approach, that peculiar combination of efficiency and empathy. The Darvian plague that broke out on Cor-Tem would have been contained immediately. Human epidemiologists had established rapid response protocols. Without them, the disease spread to 3 neighboring systems before anyone could mount an effective quarantine. Millions died needlessly. The trade dispute between the Hixian Confederacy and the Volon Dominion, normally mediated by human negotiators who mastered both species' complex honor codes, erupted into a shooting war. Hundreds of ships destroyed. Billions of credits in damages. All because no one else understood how to navigate the cultural nuances. The galaxy was coming apart at the seams, and each unraveling thread led back to humans. Thelnox stood in the empty Earth Embassy on Proxima Station, a place he'd visited countless times over 3 centuries. Human representatives had always welcomed him, offered him their coffee, engaged in hours-long debates about philosophy, ethics, policy. They'd argued fiercely, but never with malice. They'd challenged his assumptions, but always with good faith. The embassy's system still ran. Holographic displays still cycled through images of Earth, mountains, oceans, cities, forests, deserts. The diversity of a single world somehow captured in endless variations. A message played on loop, in galactic standard. The Earth Embassy stands as a testament to humanity's commitment to galactic cooperation and mutual understanding. All species welcome. All voices heard. Together, we reach for stars we could never touch alone. Thelnox's mandibles trembled. Why? He whispered to the empty room. Why did you leave? The holographic Earth spun silently, offering no answers. The Council met in emergency session for the 47th time. Ambassador Vrex stood at the podium, his earlier satisfaction replaced by barely concealed panic. The Vraxian Empire has lost contact with 27 colonies. Our FTL communication network depended on human-designed relay stations. Without maintenance protocols, the Qualvian medical system is on the verge of collapse, another delegate interrupted. Human doctors represented 30% of our healthcare workforce. Our own species lacks the capacity. The Praxian economy has contracted by 64%. The Colesian refugee crisis has destabilized 3 sectors. The Netherian collective has severed all contact. Without human mediators. Enough. Grand Counselor Yethnara's voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The eldest among them, her species had witnessed the rise and fall of countless civilizations across millennia. Her obsidian carapace gleamed under the chamber lights, her multifaceted eyes reflecting the 72 panicking ambassadors before her. This council has stood for 18,000 years, she said, her voice carrying the weight of ages. We have weathered wars, plagues, economic collapses, first contacts gone wrong, and the heat death of entire star systems. We are the pinnacle of galactic civilization. And you're telling me that the departure of one species, one relatively young, relatively primitive species that's been part of this council for less than a century, has brought us to the brink of total failure. Silence. Heavy, suffocating silence. Yes, Thelnox said quietly. Every eye in the chamber turned toward him. That's exactly what we're telling you, Grand Counselor. Because it's the truth. He moved to the center podium, called up holographic displays. Data flowed across screens, economic projections, casualty reports, infrastructure failures, diplomatic breakdowns. A galaxy-spanning catastrophe rendered in cold numbers. We didn't notice, he continued, his voice steady despite the trembling in his limbs. None of us noticed. Humans have been part of the galactic community for 83 years. Less than a single generation for most of our species. A cosmic eye blink. But in that time, they didn't just participate in galactic civilization. They became its foundation. He pulled up more data. Humans comprised 4% of the Council's population, but they represented 17% of our healthcare workers, 23% of our engineers, 31% of our educators, 42% of our mediators and negotiators, over 60% of our breakthrough research. They volunteered for the dangerous jobs, the unglamorous positions, the difficult assignments that other species avoided. They filled gaps we didn't even know existed. They were aggressive, Vrex protested weakly. Expansionist. They wanted to change everything. No, Thelnox interrupted. They wanted to help with everything. There's a difference. A critical difference that we were too blind to see. He pulled up communications records, thousands of them. Look. Human researchers collaborating with Qualvian artists. Human engineers teaching Praxian apprentices. Human doctors studying rare Colesian diseases. Human negotiators mediating disputes between species who'd been enemies for millennia. They didn't impose their culture. They learned ours. All of them. Every single one. Another hologram flickered to life, language learning statistics. The average human diplomat spoke fluent galactic standard plus 7 other species-specific languages. The average council diplomat speaks too. Humans memorized our cultural taboos, our historical grievances, our religious practices, our art forms, our jokes. They did the work of understanding us, and we never reciprocated. Thelnox's voice cracked. They were loud, yes. Emotional, yes. Difficult sometimes. But they were also tireless, generous, curious, adaptable, and fundamentally kind. They saw every other species as people, not just alien, but people, with dreams and fears and worth. And they dedicated themselves to helping us achieve our potential. He closed his eyes. And we took them for granted. We tolerated them. Some of us barely that. We never truly welcomed them. Never tried to understand why they worked so hard to understand us. We accepted their contributions while dismissing their perspectives. We let them carry the weight of holding our civilization together while we argued about trade routes and mineral rights. We don't know why they left, he finished quietly. But I'm starting to suspect we drove them away. Not with hostility, with indifference. With casual disrespect. With the death by 1,000 cuts of never quite accepting them as equals. The chamber remained silent. A silence that felt like guilt. Then the lights went out. Emergency systems kicked in immediately, bathing the council chambers in red emergency luminescence. Alarms wailed. Defensive shields activated. Delegates scrambled for cover, shouting in a dozen different languages. Thelnock remained standing, perfectly still, as a holographic image materialized in the chamber's center. Not a transmission. Not a recording. Something else. Something that bypassed every security protocol, every defensive system, every firewall the Council had built over 18 millennia. A human appeared. Young, female, dark skin, kind eyes. She wore simple blue uniform, the kind worn by Earth's diplomatic corps. She smiled gently, the way someone smiles when delivering difficult but necessary news. "Hello," she said in perfect galactic standard. "My name is Ambassador Chun-Li, and I speak for humanity. We apologize for the abrupt departure. We apologize for the disruption. And we apologize for what comes next." The image shifted. Space itself seemed to tear open, and through the rift, delegates saw something. Fleets of vessels unlike anything in the galactic database. Structures that bent physics into impossible configurations. Energy readings that made their sensors scream in confusion. And everywhere humans. But not the humans the galaxy had known. These humans wore armor that seemed grown rather than built. They commanded technologies that made current council science look like primitive fire starting. They moved with the confidence of a species that had transcended limits the galaxy didn't know existed. 83 years ago, we joined the Galactic Council with hope and enthusiasm, Ambassador Chun continued. We believed we'd found our place among the stars. A community of species working together toward common good. We offered everything we had. Our knowledge. Our labor, our lives. We helped build, defend, heal, teach, mediate, and innovate. We did this gladly, joyfully. Her expression hardened. And in return, we were tolerated, viewed as useful but uncouth, capable but culturally inferior, loud, emotional, too human. We watched as species who'd known war for millennia dismissed our conflicts as proof of our barbarism. We watched as our adaptability was called lacking identity. We watched as our curiosity was called aggressive expansion. We watched as our every attempt at friendship was met with polite distance. The holographic images shifted, showing moments Thelnock recognized. Council sessions where human proposals were dismissed without discussion. Social gatherings where human delegates stood alone. Cultural exchange programs where only humans ever learned the other languages. Medical emergencies where only human doctors volunteered for dangerous treatments. Diplomatic crises where only human negotiators stepped forward. We stayed anyway, Chun said softly, because we believed it would get better. That eventually you'd see us as equals, as friends, as family. We believed in the dream of galactic unity so strongly that we subordinated our own development to helping you achieve yours. We gave you our best and brightest. We shared every advancement. We died in your wars, cured your diseases, taught your children, built your infrastructure, and mediated your conflicts. And you never asked why we cared so much. Never wondered why we worked so hard for species who barely acknowledged our existence outside what we could provide. Never questioned why we stayed when we were so clearly unwelcome. The image shifted again. Thelnock's breath caught. Earth. But not Earth as they knew it. This Earth blazed with such technological sophistication that it made Proxima Station look like a primitive settlement. Orbital structures that shouldn't exist. Energy signatures that violated known physics. And beyond it, spreading through the Sol system, transformation on a scale that defied comprehension. We stayed because we were waiting, Chen said. Watching, learning, growing. While our diplomats, doctors, teachers, and engineers served the galaxy, our scientists worked in secret. Our species has a peculiar trait, you see. We're very, very good at playing two games simultaneously. The public game, where we integrated into your society, adopted your norms, accepted our role as the galaxy's helpful children. And the private game, where we pursued advancement at a pace your species would find impossible. 83 years for you. For us. We grew up. The holographic display expanded, showing human installations across 100 systems. Technologies that hadn't existed even in theoretical form. Scientific breakthroughs that represented centuries of advancement compressed into decades. And everywhere, that same confident purpose. We achieved post-scarcity economics 30 years ago, Chen explained. Mastered quantum manipulation 40 years ago. Cracked dimensional engineering 50 years ago. Developed true artificial intelligence 60 years ago. Achieved biological immortality 70 years ago. Every human you met, every doctor and diplomat and teacher, they were volunteers. Not because they had to serve, but because they wanted to help. Because despite your indifference, despite your casual disrespect, we still believed in the dream of galactic community. But dreams require reciprocity. Partnership requires mutual respect. And 83 years is long enough to realize that some species aren't ready to meet us as equals. Perhaps you never will be. Thelnock felt something break inside him. Wait, he whispered. Please. We didn't understand. If we'd known. If you'd known we were more advanced. Chen's smile turned sad. Then you would have feared us. Or tried to exploit us. Or demanded we share technologies you're not ready for. We've seen how the Council treats species with significant technological advantages. We've watched how you suppress development that threatens the established order. We've observed how you punish innovation that disrupts your comfortable stability. So we played your game. We let you believe you were the advanced civilization teaching the primitive humans. We let you feel superior while we solved your problems. We accepted your tolerance instead of demanding your respect, because we wanted to give you time. Time to grow beyond your prejudices. Time to recognize that advancement isn't measured in millennia, but in wisdom. Time to understand that a species' worth isn't determined by how long they've existed, but by what they choose to do with existence. The hologram flickered. For a moment, Thelnock saw pain in Chen's eyes, deep, profound pain. 83 years wasn't enough. Perhaps 8,000 wouldn't be. So we're leaving. Not in anger, though we have cause. Not in contempt, though we have reason. We're leaving because staying would require us to continue sacrificing our potential to maintain your comfort. And that's not partnership. That's exploitation, even if unintentional. What happens now? Grand Counselor Yethnara asked, her ancient voice finally showing its age. What will you do with such power? We'll grow, Chun said simply. Beyond your physics. Beyond your understanding. We'll explore regions of space your species haven't dreamed of. We'll achieve wonders that would seem like magic to your eyes. We'll build civilizations that make this council look like a child's first attempt at organization. And we'll do it without you. But, Thelnock's voice broke. The galaxy is falling apart without you. Our economy, our infrastructure, our medical systems, we need you. No, Chen said gently. You need to learn to take care of yourselves. For 18,000 years, this council has existed in comfortable stagnation. Species join, contribute what they can, and settle into established patterns. No one pushes. No one challenges. No one asks if there might be better ways. And species like ours, young, energetic, innovative, you tolerate us until we either conform or leave. Usually we conform. We chose to leave. The systems we built will continue running for approximately 20 years. After that, you'll need to maintain them yourselves. The research we started will reach natural conclusion points, enough to build on if you choose to invest the effort. The treaties we mediated will hold if you honor their spirit. We've left you with tools for success. What you do with them is your choice. The image began to fade. Panic rippled through the chamber. Delegates shouted questions, pleas, demands. But Chen's hologram simply smiled, sad, kind, final. We wish you well, she said. Truly. Perhaps in another 1,000 years, you'll be ready for the conversation we wanted to have. Perhaps you'll develop the wisdom to match your age. Perhaps you'll learn that a civilization's greatness isn't measured by how long it's existed, but by how it treats those who are different. We hope so. The galaxy deserves better than comfortable stagnation. But we can't wait that long. We have stars to explore, mysteries to unravel, potentials to achieve. And we'll do it alone because sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone isn't your presence, it's the space to grow on their own. Goodbye, Galactic Council. Thank you for tolerating us. We're sorry we couldn't be what you needed. But more importantly, we're sorry you couldn't be what we hoped. The hologram vanished. The lights returned to normal. 73 species sat in absolute silence, staring at empty space where humanity's final message had appeared. Then, slowly, every sensor in the chamber lit up with the same alert. Gravitational anomalies. Massive. Cascading. Emanating from Sol system and spreading outward like ripples on a cosmic pond. Space itself was folding. Humans weren't just leaving. They were taking their entire star system with them. Every planet, every station, every structure they'd built, vanishing into dimensions the Council didn't have mathematics to describe. Felnock watched on holographic displays as Earth, Mars, Luna, Europa, Titan, all of humanity's home worlds and habitats, simply ceased to exist in conventional space. Not destroyed. Translated. Moved to somewhere else. Somewhere the galaxy couldn't follow. For trillion humans. Gone. Truly, completely gone. The economic projections updated in real time. Cascading failures across every sector. Medical systems in collapse. Infrastructure degrading. Diplomatic networks fragmenting. Trade routes collapsing. The careful stability of 18,000 years dissolving. All because one species that had been present for less than a century had quietly become the glue holding everything together. What have we done? Someone whispered. Felnock closed his eyes. He remembered Janet's coffee shop. The human teachers and their devoted students. The researchers who volunteered for dangerous experiments. The negotiators who learned 73 different cultural frameworks. The doctors who worked themselves to exhaustion saving lives of species who never learned their names. The engineers who solved impossible problems and then taught others how they did it. The artists who found common ground where none existed. The comedians who made the galaxy laugh together. All those humans who gave everything they had, asked for nothing but acceptance in return, and never received even that small grace. We took, he said quietly. We took their labor, their knowledge, their sacrifice, their lives. And we never gave them the one thing they actually wanted. Recognition. Respect. Belonging. We treated them like useful tools instead of people. And now we'll spend the next 1,000 years learning what the galaxy loses when you break the hearts of those who loved you most. In the weeks that followed, the true scope of the catastrophe became clear. Humans hadn't just left. They'd systematically removed themselves from every system, every structure, every process they'd helped build. Not destructively, they'd left everything functional, documented, maintained for a transition period. But the absence was total. And the galaxy discovered something terrifying. They had no idea how to replicate what humans had done. The technologies made sense in theory but required intuitive leaps that other species couldn't make. The organizational systems worked perfectly but depended on human-specific cognitive approaches. The cultural bridges held but no one else understood how to maintain them. Humans had thought differently, fundamentally differently. Their brains made connections that other species missed. Their psychology found solutions in chaos. Their emotional intelligence navigated social complexities that other species couldn't even perceive. And they'd been using those unique capabilities to quietly hold together a galactic civilization that was too proud to admit it needed them. Felnock spent his remaining years compiling a record. A true history of humanity's time among the stars. He interviewed thousands of beings who'd worked with humans. He collected stories of human kindness, human brilliance, human sacrifice. He documented every contribution, every innovation, every life saved by human hands. It became a memorial, a confession, a warning. To whatever species reads this, he wrote in the final entry, know that the galaxy once hosted a people called humans. They were young by our standards, primitive by our measurements, and incomprehensible by our psychology. They were also wise beyond their years, capable beyond their technology, and kind beyond our deserving. They came to us with open hearts and helping hands. They offered friendship, and we gave them tolerance. They sought community, and we gave them isolation. They dreamed of unity, and we gave them indifference. They loved us despite our inability to love them back, and they left us not with hatred but with hope that we might one day grow into the civilization they believed we could become. This is our failure. our shame, our loss. And if the universe is just, we will never see their like again. Because species like humanity, species that give freely, forgive readily, and believe desperately in the goodness of others, deserve better than what we gave them. We were the Galactic Council. 18,000 years of civilization. 73 species working in harmony. And we couldn't recognize greatness when it served us coffee and asked only for a smile in return. The galaxy quaked in humanity's absence. Systems collapsed. Civilizations struggled. The comfortable stagnation that had defined millennia gave way to chaos and decline. Some species adapted. Most didn't. All of them understood, too late, what they'd lost. And somewhere in the vast impossibility beyond conventional space, humans built their own civilization. Free from the weight of an ungrateful galaxy. Free to achieve their potential without limitation. Free to explore the infinite without species who would never understand them. The Council sent probes to search for them. Transmitted messages of apology, pleas for return, promises of change. Every signal vanished into the cosmic void, unanswered. Because humans had learned a hard lesson. Some species love you for who you are. Some species love you for what you provide. And when you're a species that provides everything, it's impossible to know the difference until you stop providing and see who stays. The galaxy stayed, but the humans were gone. And in the empty coffee shop on Proxima Station, the automated systems continued brewing coffee for customers who would never return, while a loop played endlessly in the background. All species welcome. All voices heard. Together, we reach for stars we could never touch alone. But some species had already touched those stars, and they decided to reach further, alone. Because that's what humanity does best: evolve, adapt, transcend. And leave behind only the echo of what might have been if the galaxy had just been brave enough to say welcome home instead of what can you do for us. The galaxy learned too late. Never take humanity for granted. We don't seek recognition, but when we're gone, you'll finally understand what you lost. If you enjoyed humanity's ultimate power move, hit subscribe for more stories where humans prove that kindness has limits, and even the most helpful species eventually says enough. Next video. What happens when the galaxy comes begging for humanity to return? Trust me, you won't see this twist coming. Watch it now.